Hey guys, this is Gail Kim from Impact Wrestling, and you are listening to the 8-Bit Suplex podcast.
Welcome back to another rousing edition of 8-Bit Suplex here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. I don't know why I'm talking so slow. It could just be a sign of the times, a sign of the week that everyone is having, the collective breath holding that we are going through as a nation, trying to see, what happens. Some of us voted blue, some of us voted orange. But it is what it is. We'll see what happens. But without further ado, I owe this person at least 20 bells, but I haven't made it down to the city hall to pay those bells. Returning from the sick list, the injured reserve, if you will, Miss Sandy Gaviria. Sandy, how are you?
Hi, Josh. Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. How are you?
I'm okay. I think you had a little bit of a sinus thing last week. I've had some really bad allergies, so if I sound a little raspy, I promise it's not my Tina Turner impersonation. It's just a little bit of rasp, a little bit. I got my AHA sparkling water next to me though, so we should be all right. We should be good to go. Oh yeah, your drink might be a little more fun than mine. Yeah, no. Not more. I don't know.
Just some ginger ale.
Ginger ale. Oh wow, you're really trying to get rid of any lingering sickness there.
Is it supposed to help? I don't know. It's just what we had.
Yeah, listen. Anytime I feel bad, I'm like, man, I need some ginger ale. Like that's like the go-to. But I'm very specific about my ginger ales, and this is a great introduction to a wrestling podcast is to talk about ginger ale. But I'm going to do it anyways. I'm pretty much strictly Canada Dry ginger ale, pretty much strictly that.
I think it's a pretty general consensus that is the best ginger ale.
Well, there are people that would disagree with that. There
What's
are.
the other brand?
Well, you got what was it, Wagner's?
Right.
There's people that hang on. Seagram's is okay, or Verner's. Verner's was the word I was thinking of. Verner's is a little bitter to me. I'm not a big Verner's kind of guy, but I'll drink. I'll drink Seagram's. It's not that bad. But yeah, Canada Dry is the go-to for sure.
Yeah.
Made with real ginger, if you believe the can. Which
I'm drinking a Winn-Dixie generic brand ginger ale right now, and it's very flat. 2 out of 10 would not recommend.
Well, the flatness is a shame. I'm sure it's probably fine otherwise. But we got.
It tastes like soap.
Okay, well, listen. So for the listeners out there, if you're anywhere in the jurisdiction listening that would have a Winn-Dixie, which is primarily the southeastern United States, don't go with a store brand ginger ale. According to Sandy, I'm not burying it. Sandy is. So, but we got a lot to get to this week, Sandy. We're past our spooky season, but that doesn't mean that the frights are not still around here on Impact Wrestling. We kick off this week's episode with the reliving of Johnny Bravo getting shot at his wedding. Because
okay, so pause. I have some catching up to do, and so this is the way it opens, right? They kind of tell us about the wedding and stuff, and why he was shot.
Yeah, so to set the stage, if you didn't catch last week's, basically we had the wedding, some very funny stuff, played on some tropes. Everyone kept looking around anytime there was a, speak now, forever hold your peace type moment. Everyone paused and kind of looked around, looked left, looked right. Okay, well, guess we'll just keep going. And eventually, as he gets ready to kiss his bride, Rosemary, the lights go off, a classic wrestling trope. and you hear the sound of a gunshot and a flash of light on the screen, which is pretty jarring if you didn't know what was going to happen ahead of time.
Amazing.
And yeah, so of course we find Johnny Bravo shot. At the time that it happened, they gave no indication that he would possibly be still amongst the living. But we found out tonight, right off the bat, Sandy, that Johnny Bravo is in critical condition in a medically induced coma, according to Scott Demore.
That's something else. I listened to the 8-Bit Suplex last week, and I was listening to this, and I just kept saying, what? So I actually need to go back and rewatch this and see how they executed this, because even as I'm hearing you discuss it, I'm like, what?
Yeah, it is definitely like, it's like,
It's out there.
it's one part like telenovela, it's one part wrestling, it's one part, uh, spooky, Twilight Zone
I
type stuff.
love your attempt at saying telenovela. That was cute.
I'm
That was
pretty
cute.
sure I said it perfect.
Sure. I'll give it to you.
It's not like I was like, hey, I like to watch them telenovas, you know what I mean? I mean, it wasn't
No,
that bad.
you give it a good shot.
What you're saying is that it sounded all white
Mm-hmm.
a little bit. All right, you know what? I
I
can
mean, you
handle it.
said it, not me.
Listen, it's okay. I'm not a true. I'm not. I'm not Latino. I'm sure the name McLaughlin gives that away. So I give it my
Well,
best, my level best, Sandy.
you
But
did. You did. I'm proud of
anyways, thank you, thank you. I'll go ahead and pat my own shoulder here since this is a Skype call. But yeah, no, it's an interesting little wrinkle that we got on. Wrestling weddings, they happen and they keep happening for some reason. I don't know why they keep happening,
you. Yeah.
but
I don't know.
I don't know what part of the demographic that appeals to. I don't know if that's a attempt to, in a stereotypical way, capture wife audience share, getting wives to sit with their husbands. I don't know, but it's not the first wedding we've had this year in wrestling. Um, so we had, I think,
But you know what? I think I remember reading an article, and I can't necessarily quote the source, but it was after the Lana Rusev, Liv Morgan wedding fiasco thing,
yeah, Bobby
and
Lashley,
oh,
yeah,
not Bobby Lashley, that's who it was. And I was reading about it. Some article was quoting like the numbers that those weddings in wrestling actually do. They actually do draw some big numbers. I think it's just the intrigue of like, okay, what shit show is going to happen at this
right,
wedding? And I think it does pull a lot of interest from older women, and maybe, I mean, I think that could go for everyone. Yeah, we're sitting here talking about it from the wrestling fan perspective. We're like, oh, we know some crazy shit's going to happen, but it's that entertainment portion of it, and somebody getting shot. I mean, who would have seen that coming? I think that's pretty out there. That's much better than just your typical cake in the face, haha thing that someone else always tends to do. So
right, yeah.
somebody got
And
shot.
what's funny too is that everyone was in Halloween costumes and everything too. Followed by as the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man got a chuckle out of me because I'm a sucker for anything Ghostbusters. So you know,
Oh, I bet you look so cute.
but
I love it.
anyways, what I want to point out here of our opening segment is that of course, like I said, Scott Demore says Johnny Bravo is still alive, just in serious condition. And I noticed this like immediately before Scott Demore pointed it out. He's talking to Tommy Dreamer about it, and Tommy Dreamer is 100% dressed up as Sherlock Holmes.
Was he dressed up like that at the wedding?
He was not. No, no,
Oh, okay, okay.
he was dressed up as Road Warrior Animal at the wedding.
Oh, okay.
As he's continuing his tribute to his departed friend. But no, in this segment he comes out with his like he's got his little brown coat and he's ready to be a
I
detective.
I noted that on here. It was so silly. That's the first thing I noticed. I'm like, look at his Sherlock costume. It
And
looks so
we
silly in there, but
we find out that Tommy Dreamer is in fact going to go and investigate to find out who shot Bravo.
this will
And
be this will be something.
well, it's going to take a few weeks. They later on teased that he whittles it down to 10 suspects this week, and Josh Matthews kind of lets us know, well, maybe next week he'll whittle it down to 5, and then so on and so forth. So,
Mhm.
as we've talked about on the show before, the Impact announced crew definitely kind of points to what's going to happen later. They kind of tease, they show their hand a little bit to kind of keep you coming back. So I think we're in for the long haul here with Detective Dreamer.
We are. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. It's his second career, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if he wants to send me a
Mhm.
direct message, I have some theories for him. He did send me a DM once, so maybe send me another
Best
one. I
friend.
don't know. I mean,
Who knows?
I like to think we were best friends, but who am I to say? But yeah, this one we're gonna get started right off the gate with the action. After the title sequence, we get the Knockouts uh, championship on the line with the defending Su Young against Deanna using her rematch clause.
We do. So Deanna comes out with Kimberly, and as you mentioned, it's against Sue Young. So I guess what happened last week is that Deanna had some counsel to say, "Hey, you know what? She's not even alive." And I said, "Any alive man or woman, right?"
Right.
Which, I mean, did she actually say that? Because I was kind of surprised, but
Yeah.
anyway, she was able to kind of get her way into saying, "Hey, this is what happened at Bound for Glory was not fair. I wasn't prepared. Too young, not even alive. I need my rematch." This match, I was kind of surprised. I was like, how are we gonna have a title match to open up the show? I was kind of offended, but then I've seen the way it played out. I'm like, okay, it makes sense. It wasn't supposed to be a blowaway match. It wasn't supposed to be the
Right.
rematch of the century. It was supposed to just be something that will allow the storyline to continue. And as we all know now, this is a big change to what I think were their original plans with the match that was supposed to happen about Bulgari with Deanna and Kylie Ray. Josh, I don't know if you want to give us a little information on that.
Yeah, and I had this is our serious kind of sad face portion of the show because we are going to talk briefly because we do want to focus on the week's action. I did the other morning get an email because I did have the show subscribed to the Kylie Ray Patreon. And the Kylie Ray Patreon page sent out a message saying basically like, hey, very sorry, but basically she's not well. Um, she's not mentally in a position where she can continue with professional wrestling. So she's chosen to walk away from it. And as Dan and I kind of talked about it last week, and this is before her announcement. Um, you know, Definitely mental health, physical health. Uh, in my opinion, they absolutely take precedence over anything that happens with professional wrestling. And we don't know exactly what's going on with her, and quite frankly, we don't need to know. But I think I can speak for both of us when I say whatever she's going through. I hope that she does, get the help that she needs and seeks it out, and is, able to lead a normal life away from wrestling. And if someday she wants to try it again, I think the wrestling community should be ready and willing to open their arms back up to her.
Absolutely, and you nailed it. It's none of our business really to know where she's at the moment. We do know that she's not 100%, but we just wish her all the best. And if she does decide to come back, like you mentioned, our generation has been able to kind of break that boundary and that stigma on mental health, and we've been able to be more open about it. And it's not just a thing like it's not taboo. And if somebody says, "Hey, I'm having some mental issues. I'm going through depression. I have anxiety." It's not just be like, "Oh, they're crazy. They need help. They need psychotherapy." No, it's like, "Oh, wow, I can relate. This is what I do to cope, and this is
Right.
what I deal with." So we've been able to kind of break that stigma, and I feel like we've come on the other better side of things when we're able to discuss it more. We don't feel so alone. I've personally gone through stages of anxiety, social anxiety mostly, and depression. And yeah, it hits you like a ton of bricks. And I completely relate to what she could be going through. Of course, I don't know her, but that pressure, I could only imagine what she deals with. And like you mentioned, if she does decide to come back, that I think everyone will welcome her with open arms. She's so freaking talented, and
She is.
she seems like she has such a great personality. So We'll see. I think right now, Impact. I think the way Impact handled it was absolutely great. They didn't put blame on her and then just say, "Hey, she was a no-show." It was just like, "There's a situation. They fixed it quickly by putting Su Young on there, and they had and her and Deanna had a great match at Bound for Glory." And I feel like initially people were mad at Impact saying, "Hey, you advertised this match and it didn't happen. You can't do
Right.
that." And it's like, no, they didn't know. As far as they knew, she was going to be there. So I think they handled it perfectly. I want to give them props for that because I feel like any other place would have been like, well, they decided to not show up and nah. But, and they just have to keep going. And we're trying to find this new storyline, I guess, that goes forward with the women's championship. So we'll see where that goes. And going back to the match that happened today, the match itself, like I mentioned, it wasn't the greatest match in the world. To me, it kind of felt a little sluggish and a little bit slow. But they're trying to build that storyline, and what ended up happening is Kimberly threw a chair in the ring for Deanna to maybe use to get out of something. There was a little bit of a tug of war between Su Young and Deanna for the chair. Su Young ended up actually hitting Deanna with the chair, and so Deanna wins with the DQ thanks to the chair involvement there. So yeah, it was there to kind of just advance the story.
Yeah, and of course, with the champion's advantage, since Su Young lost by DQ, she retains the Knockouts championship.
Correct.
Which leads to a further discussion between Deanna's barrister and Scott D'Amore later on in the show, where they have a conversation where the barrister, which is somewhat goofy for Impact to throw a barrister out there. But yeah, so he goes and says, hey, this wasn't the proper use of her rematch clause. You need to give her another match to win it back. And so he's like, okay, great. Go ahead and tell Deanna that she gets a no DQ match with Su Young at Turning Point. So Turning Point, of course, is our November monthly special on Impact Plus. So that's our first match announced for it, and it's going to be a no DQ match between Su Young and Deanna Purrazzo. There are a few people, Sandy, on that Impact roster that I would not want to be in a no DQ match. I think Su Young's pretty high up on the list.
I think so too. The poor guy looked pale when Scott D'Amore said that to him. And I think I want to point out Scott D'Amore is so freaking great at these backstage segments. He's a natural.
He is.
Oh, I love seeing those segments with him.
It was great too. It's like the barrister was talking to him, telling him what he needs to have. He goes, "Oh, thank you so much for explaining professional wrestling to me. After 30 years, I never got it, and now you just let me know."
I
It was
laughed
pretty
so
good
hard.
stuff. Scott D'Amore, he's very good, and I actually skipped a brief segment before the barrister, and we'll just touch on it briefly. Is Heath, because of Rhino's victory at Bound for Glory in the Call Your Shot Gauntlet match, Heath now gets his Impact contract, but
Wow.
he
Heartbreak.
he has to wrestle next week to sign his contract because Scott doesn't want to sign an injured wrestler. Because who would? I mean, that's a risk. That's a liability. He might not, perform the way he's supposed to. And, Heath and Rhino, no, Heath's good. He's ready to go. Don't worry about it. Oh, he is. Okay, well, you know what? Listen, I think at one point he's like, this is some carny shit, guys. Like, knock it off. Like, it was pretty funny. But yeah, good segment there, which led into Deanna's barrister. And then we come up to our next match here with, the Ultimate Finesser, Chris Bay, versus Trey Miguel. And this was obviously the highlight of the show. But before we get into that, there is some outside of Impact news around Chris Bay. And I don't know if you saw this, Sandy. But New Japan Pro Wrestling has announced that there's going to be a Super J Cup tournament in the United States using their talent here in the U.S. It's going to be airing live in December. And this roster that they're using for the U.S. is got 2 Impact Wrestling superstars on it. The first one is an obvious one because he's done a lot of work with New Japan Pro Wrestling, and that's, of course, TJ Perkins, a.k.a. TJP. Excuse me. But also, we have guys like ACH and Leo Rush in there. El Phantasmo, of course, is a New Japan Pro Wrestling talent. Clark Connors is, from the LA Dojo out there. But the big surprise really came was Chris Bay. Chris Bay is going to
That's
be in
awesome.
the New Japan Cup, or not New Japan Cup, excuse me, the Super J Cup. So they have so many similar names for their tournaments over there, and I apologize
Like,
to the guys
ugh.
over at Keeping It Strong Style. They'll definitely be talking about this tournament when it airs, so definitely tune in to their coverage of that. And we may talk about it briefly, just because TJP and Chris Bay are a part of it. But
Hell
yeah,
yeah.
Chris Bay getting to shine on an international stage, streaming on New Japan World in
That
December
is
as
awesome.
part of the Super J Cup. So kudos to him for getting that opportunity. So
Hell yeah.
best of luck to him and TJP representing Impact. I feel like we have this like shared bond with Impact here on the Social
Yeah,
Suplex Podcast Network. Their success is our success. As
I agree.
Impact does better, maybe more people want to hear about it, and they can come and listen to us talk about it. That's the way I kind of feel about it, Sandy.
Hell yeah. You know what? I feel like it this way. The more people listen to us and maybe they don't watch Impact, we're getting Impact viewers. So
Right.
it's like both, right?
So what you're saying is that Impact should pay us.
Right?
Maybe we'll work on
We
it.
can both
Listen, you
succeed.
got more connections than I do, Sandy. So maybe we can work that angle. But no, seriously though, that's super exciting. Great to
Hell
see,
yeah.
and should be a good tournament because uh, all of the guys that are in that tournament can absolutely just go. So I'm excited for it. You should be also, and the you meaning the listeners. I know you're excited about it, Sandy, for sure. But why don't you break down this Chris Bay Trey Miguel match for us?
So Trey Miguel is officially, I believe, a spider monkey. Oh my God, he would not stay on his feet for more than 2 seconds. He is out there. As soon as Chris Bay came out, I'm like, oh man. And then Trey Miguel's music hit. I'm like, oh, this one should be fun. I know you mentioned this was the hottest match of the night, but to me, actually, it was the main event, which we'll get to later on.
Okay.
But yeah, this one, for some reason, I was really excited for it. Something didn't feel, I wasn't as excited for it as the other matches that I've seen from the X Division roster.
Understandable. Understandable.
I don't know what it was. Something just felt a little off. I really can't even put my finger on it. But what we see here is still a great, very fun match. We see Chris Bay with some heel antics. You know, he did the eye rake to Trey Miguel to get the upper hand. We see. Did you catch that reverse 619 by Trey? I didn't even know that was a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
It
I
didn't
think he
look.
did it last week also, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm,
But that is yeah, to do a 619 period, I'm sure, and you can speak to this, Sandy, probably better than I could. I've never touched a wrestling rope in my life. Um, to do a 619, I imagine is quite difficult, and then to do it in reverse, I feel like would be more difficult.
I was blown away. I was like, "What? I didn't even know that was a thing." And of course, it's like it wasn't. It didn't look. You're doing it in reverse. You can't even see where you're putting your feet, so you just have to
Right.
trust that like it gets there. So the camera angle made it. You can tell it didn't get as much impact, or it wasn't precisely where it needed to be. But still, it's pretty impressive. That requires a lot of strength. And I just didn't even know that was a possible thing to do. But yeah, at the end, we do see Chris Bay picking up the win with the second rope flying cutter after a not so clean, not so good. God, what's the Nando's kick that Will
Yep.
Ospreay does? What's it called? The Cheeky Nando's kick?
Yep.
That's what it's called. Yes, that name cracks me up every time. So it didn't look so great, or I think Chris Bay was able to get his hands up, so he didn't get as much impact
Yeah,
from it.
partial block.
And yeah, partial block there, and so beautiful second rope flying cutter, and so he does pick up the win.
Yeah, he gets a lot of hang time off that second rope.
Oh my
And
gosh,
he
it
hits
was
that
insane.
cutter past the midpoint of the ring from the corner. So he really
Live,
really flew through the air there. But yeah,
yeah,
no, just under 6.5 minutes, and that might be part of the problem too. Is that
yeah.
oftentimes with these earlier matches they don't give them too long. But I think I thought it was pretty good. I really enjoyed it the whole time. There was a lot of good 50-50 kind of moments, a lot of good counter sequences. Um, some if you like counter sequences that are kind of that choreographed kind of thing, it's the kind of thing for you. Knowing that you're not the biggest fan of those, Sandy, that's
I
probably why
think that's what it was.
this probably put it that sour taste in your mouth at the start, and that's kind of where it went,
Yeah,
I think. But speaking of Chris
you
Bay,
know me so well.
Well, we've been doing this for a while now. This is episode 13. So
Ooh.
I think you missed three. So this is your 10th episode, Sandy. So,
Ah.
if I did that math correctly, very quickly there in my head, which I think I did. I don't know, maybe I didn't. Who cares?
I don't know.
But yeah, so Chris Bay, we see later on in the show, and we'll talk about it now. It seems like he's trying to finesse his way. He is the ultimate finesser. Finesse his way into a title shot against Rich Swann for the Impact World Championship. And Rich is like, man, you got to earn it. So we'll keep an eye on that as it develops.
I
But
thought that segment was so fun, so clean. Like they both had like that rapport back and forth, and of course Chris Bay with his swag and finesse over here, just like, "Hey man, congratulations! I see you winning that title. You see me over here, like, and he's talking like that, and he's like, maybe you
yeah,
should go ahead and talk to the office and see about getting a title match with Chris Bay." It was so fun. I loved
it
it.
was really good. No, Chris Bay, it was so good. And you have Rich Swann is the smoothest, the smooth, right? So great segment. And that was pretty much towards the end of the show.
Mm.
I'm just jumping in back and forth just to tie the characters to their, things. Just because I think sometimes if we just go start to finish and just recap the show, maybe you don't want to go back and watch the show because we've already told you about it in order. So I don't know, maybe break it up a little bit, chit chat a little bit
Maybe
about
try
different
something
things.
new.
You
Hell
know.
yeah.
So then we'll touch on locker room talk here, the type of segment that we wouldn't normally spend a lot of time on, but I want to point it out because we get some information here out of it about the Knockouts Tag Team Tournament. Uh, of course, Madison Rain is hosting with her co-host Johnny Swinger, and they have on as a guest Jordan Grace as well as Tennille Dashwood. Um, Accompanied by, of course, Caleb with a K. Now, they set this up as both women can't find tag partners. So they're on locker room talk. They're just setting this whole thing up. Even Madison Rain goes so far to just completely jump the shark and say, hey, you guys should be teammates. And then, you know what? Tennille has other plans.
They got me. They got me good. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, no, they're gonna go and do some back and forth here, some smack talking, but then ultimately, Jordan Grace and Tennille Dashwood are gonna be like, all right, fine, we'll do this. We'll be a tag team for the tournament.
Yep,
And man, they got me. They got me good.
they
As
did.
soon as I
Listen,
saw Tennille
they got me too.
Dashwood being like, oh my gosh, she had such a good poker face. She was just over here like, she's talking about it like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. We do need this in this room. There is a tag team that can be that. They're going to be undefeated. We're going to win the championship. And I'm like, all right, yeah, let's go. But then she started saying too many nice things, and I'm like, oh no, no. Like the very last second, I was like, no. And yeah, so she asked Madison Rain to be her tag team partner instead. Right after Jordan Grace was like, hey, we should do it. We should be tag partners. What a
Yep,
disrespectful, first of all. Poor Jordan.
I know, I know, and it really sets up too. And I pulled up the knockouts roster to make sure that I was not mistaken in my thought here. Um, but looking at this roster, Jordan has already kind of said she's not going to partner with Alicia Edwards because it didn't work out. That leaves, and I'm looking down the list here, nobody for her to tag with. Um, because you look through the list, okay, Tennille and Madison, Tasha and Kira obviously are tagging together. Havoc and Nevaeh obviously are tagging together. Uh, Rosemary and Taya will probably be a tag team in there. Kimberly and Deanna, assuming that Deanna doesn't regain the Knockouts Championship belt. And so the only other person listed in the Knockouts page, of course, is your current Knockouts champion, Sue Young. They still list Susie separately, which I think is very strange. But I
Hmm.
don't think even if that Susie character was still a part of it, I don't see her tagging with Jordan Grace. And
Hmm.
then, of course, they still list Kylie Ray on their roster. She's still in good standing with the company, so maybe they just haven't decided to do that yet. Um,
Yeah.
but right now, unless Jordan Grace pairs off with Alicia Edwards, we're looking at maybe an outside person coming in to tag with her for this tournament. I don't know who that could possibly be, but it'll probably
Jordan,
just.
give me a call. I'm available.
There you go, Liana de los Santos, ready and willing.
I am
But
ready. Let's do this.
outside of you, of course, it looks like it's probably going to be Alicia Edwards, unless because then if they don't pair those off, then Alicia has no one to tag with. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Unless Rosemary is just not interested at all, and then you have Ty to throw in there, and who knows? It'll be interesting to see how that kind of shakes out. I do find it interesting that Gia Miller, the backstage reporter, is listed under the Knockouts division. Um, so I don't think she's going to get in there and mix it up, but I guess that's an
Interesting.
option. Um,
Hey, who
Officially,
knows?
I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. Tennille Dashwood and Madison Rain as a tag team, a lot of championships between them in women's divisions, across North America here. Um, I think it could work out pretty good for them. I think they're probably going to,
Literally a match made in heaven for them.
and to me, they have a pretty similar style.
Yeah,
Even like body type, how they move, everything's pretty similar. Um, so
for
yeah, I
sure.
mean, I think they could probably gel pretty well as a tag team. Madison's been around. She's a five-time Knockouts champion. I think a two-time Knockouts tag team champion. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, she can still go. I mean, she was recently at those Warrior wrestling shows, right?
Yep, yep. She actually so she
Yeah.
retired from the Indies officially at Warrior Wrestling.
Okay.
And her last match was with Kylie Ray. So, um, and they even did the whole Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, I love
I'm
you,
sorry. I
super kick. Yeah,
love. Amazing.
yeah. So great call back there. Great. Definitely go check out that match if you haven't seen it. It's a pretty good one. But yeah, so that's locker room talk, and then we pick back up with the aforementioned. I'm calling them the Dreamer Files. Um, as you know, I love to name segments unofficially. Since we ended our Moose Chronicles, I had to have another one.
Oh, I
And
miss saying Moose Chronicles.
I know. Thankfully, we'll talk about Moose later. It just is not
Mm,
necessarily a Moose Chronicle. But yeah,
I'll miss it.
The Dreamer Files continue, and as mentioned, he kind of narrows it down to 10 suspects. Um, Not that it matters at this point. We'll see where it goes. But Tommy is not above doing skits for a paycheck, so and he never will be.
No, hell no. And it fits well with the whole. I mean, this is all part of that whole like Wrestle House crew. The same people, the same kind of silly, goofy segments and storylines. It fits well for what they're trying to do. Give them time, give them stories, try new things out, get new audiences. Try different things to capture an audience. Who knows? But
Right,
they're trying. I enjoy it for the most part. Not always. There are some things that I'm just like, oh, but it's
right.
it's it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be silly, and
And
that's
it
what it
is
is.
those things. And great point out by you. Of course, it is. The crew basically of Wrestle House continuing to do their silly stuff together. At one point, Cody Deaner and Johnny Swinger figure out that they have a match against each other, and Tommy Dreamer tries to yell match time like he would in Wrestle House, and they had to remind him, of course, hey man, we're not doing that show anymore. So he was like, oh man, you're right. It was
So
pretty. It's
exactly.
And I feel like your heart breaks a little bit for Tommy when he realizes he can't call match time anymore.
Oh, well, now he's a detective, so it's okay.
Yes, he is. Yeah, Sherlock Dreamer. Um, so after that, we go to what looks like is going to be a defeat Rohit challenge, and
My man.
we get TJP coming out to the ring after Rohit says he wants a new challenger. TJP does not seem willing to let that be the case, and he comes out, and you know what? What's funny is all the things that we kind of poke fun at about TJP, about how he thinks he's the greatest wrestler of all time and all these different
Oh my
things.
God, he did it all.
He literally cuts a 3.5 minute promo, basically saying that he's the greatest wrestler of all time. Um,
Oh God.
22 years of wrestling, youngest gaijin in New Japan Pro Wrestling, selling out arenas in Mexico. Listen, you can't take any of
Brother.
that away from him. You can't. But read the room, guy.
Oh God, it was so cringy. His whole thing. I don't know if it's on purpose or I don't think it is because I feel like he is super into himself as as he's accomplished a lot, like you just said. But man, he to me is just so cringy.
He is, and I think, man, they're trying to put him as the baby face in this feud, right? And the problem with that is that TJP is too full of himself, too much of a narcissist to be the baby face. He just can't. It's not 1980s wrestling anymore, right?
Oh
Uh, you know,
man,
so I, I thought it was a good promo. Like he didn't, he hit all his beats. The content I didn't necessarily like, but I thought he delivered it well. Um, and he at one point Rohit says, "Listen, man, get out of my ring. Like I'm done with you." And so he pretends to leave, then comes back in.
you missed the most important part though.
Which part?
Like okay, so TJP saying about all his accomplishments in the past, and
Right,
Rohit
right, right,
literally
right.
says some truth, like, "Hey, that's all past tense. You're a has been." I popped so hard. I was like,
You're right.
"Oh!" And I was like,
You're
"You're
right.
not wrong, my man." That's
Yeah,
why he's a
like
fan. I
yeah,
love
no,
him.
that's true. I mean, TJP hasn't done a whole lot since he left WWE. And
Mhm.
really, even the end days of his WWE career, he was not doing much. Because, of course, as we remember, WWE decided that the cruiserweight division should be run by Enzo Amore,
Oh,
which we'll just leave that there and not
yeah,
talk
that's
about it. So,
no further comment.
but TJP, pretends to leave the ring with his, and I forgot to mention this earlier, although I don't know why I would have. He comes to the ring carrying a Starbucks cup. Instead of a generic coffee cup, I thought that was a bold move by Impact, risking having to pay any licensing fees. But he's definitely carrying a Starbucks cup, and he pretends to leave the ring, comes back in, and then bites the lid off of his cup and splashes what they're saying was hot tea on him. I don't know about you, Sandy, but it very clearly looked like water to me. Um,
Yeah.
Clear liquids, not necessarily tea all the time. But yeah, and then they just kind of brawl a little bit, and TJP stands tall, and we learned from a backstage segment. And I think they said it was going to be at Turning Point. Maybe they said it was next week. I didn't catch when they said it would be, but
I didn't either.
it sounds like it's going to be a no champions advantage match where Rohit has to actually defeat TJP. So we'll see what happens there. I'm excited. I think that's
You
going to be a.
missed the second most important part of that thing.
What did I miss this time?
The cringiest thing that came out of TJP's mouth.
Oh, which
Don't
what?
tell me
Which?
you forgot. Oh my
Well,
gosh. So he
I
throws
try to
the
forget what he
Starbucks.
says.
I right. He throws the cup of Starbucks in Rohit's face and literally stands there and goes, "And that's the tea." And then that's when the brawl ensues.
Oh yes.
I
No,
wanted
no.
to
Yeah.
barf.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. No. Yeah, that was horrible.
Awful. And that's the tea. All right.
It immediately took away like all those good things I said about his like earlier promo, like how he
Oh
delivered
yeah.
it. It was strong. Um, yeah, he erased all of that by with that stupid corny line. And you know what? Listen, I'm a corny guy. I tell stupid jokes all the time. But if I'm literally about to start a brawl because I'm trying to win a championship in professional wrestling, I don't think that's the line I'd use.
No.
And
Dude, that was
Impact,
awful.
and hey, Impact, you guys have editors. You can cut that out. You
Yeah,
made that
that's
choice.
the tea.
You chose to leave it in.
Oh my gosh, that was awful. And you just the answer, that's the tea. Like, all right.
Yeah. So, but anyways, we
Yeah,
will get a
enough with
good
TJP.
we will get a match between them. It's either at Turning Point or next week's show. I didn't catch the date, but I think it'll be a really good match between those two guys. Two really good workers, and it has to come to a finish where one man beats the other. So that'll be good. And then I think the next thing on here will be our uh, kind of tag team division, but no tagging here. It is the big LG Doc Gallows versus all ego Ethan Page, favorite of
I love
Sandy's.
Ethan Page. Yay!
And
I was very excited.
this was, I thought, actually a pretty good match. Um, and I wrote in my notes that I'm pretty sure this is the hardest that Gallows has worked in 3 years.
He was great. Yeah, he
He
gave
was
it his all.
really good this
Mhm.
match.
I loved it. And of course, this wasn't just a match that was just, okay, let's do flippy shit and choreography and just do it, right?
No.
It
Mm-mm.
was, you had the story in there because, of course, when Ethan Page, I feel like whenever he's in a match, especially as a singles, there's going to be a story there. And that's exactly what he did. So we have them, Doc Gallows with his size, which I actually wanted to note the size difference here. I thought Doc Gallows was going to completely just take over the entire ring and just make Ethan Page look so small. But Ethan Page is actually a really tall guy. He
He's a
wasn't that
pretty big
much
guy.
shorter than Doc Gallows. Yeah,
I think it's a
I was
combination
surprised.
of Doc Gallows not being as tall as we think he is, and then Ethan Page being taller than we think he is. Because
He's
you know how
insanely tall.
wrestling books heights. I mean, they book you as 6'2", Sandy. So
Yeah, man. I was actually like, okay, this is it's actually gonna look good because he's Doc Gallows is not just gonna throw Ethan Page around, which actually ended up being that way in the beginning. So Doc Gallows is constantly getting the upper hand on Ethan. And here we go with the storyline. Ethan immediately gets out of the ring. He gets really upset. He's like, God, I can't believe he's getting it on me, God. And he talks to Josh Alexander. He's like, come on, man, you gotta help me. And he's like, okay, I'm the best. I'm all ego, Ethan Page. I can do this. Gets back in there, and
yep,
again, Doc Gallows with the upper hand. This happens around 3 times until finally, we have Josh Alexander distracting Gallows, and then Ethan finally has the upper hand. Something dirty had to have happened for him to get this upper hand. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it on his own, but that's the story that we see here. He's all ego. He's
yep.
great in there, but he's a heel. He's a bad guy. He's the champ. He's going to do whatever it takes. And of course, we see him get the upper hand. And the match continues. It's a very good match. I thoroughly
Yeah.
enjoyed it. Do you have a time on this? It felt, I can't even.
So it was about, according to Cage Match, 6 minutes 18 seconds. So about the
Yeah,
same
3
same amount
match
of
is
time that
great.
Chris Bay and Trey Miguel got. So
Mm.
I thought it was really hard hitting. Gallows normally does a pretty good job with his striking. And like I said, I thought he really worked his ass off, which is something that we just don't see out of Doc Gallows too much anymore. Um, especially, listen, and I understand this entirely. The club, so to speak. By the end of their WWE run, they were not motivated to do anything, and I
And you
can't
can't
blame
really
them.
blame them.
Can't blame them. They were getting paid a lot of money to basically sit off of TV.
Yeah.
And then when they got on TV, it was to just job to whatever tag team they wanted to heat up.
Jaw.
Um,
Yep.
and it could have been like, listen, I love lucha wrestling, but if you're trying to build a team of, Gallows and Anderson, and you have Gallows and Anderson in your company, a comedy trio of Lucha House Party should not be going over clean multiple times in a row over them. And I'm fairly certain that happened. That's not to say,
Was
listen,
rough.
I love Grand Metalik. I love Lince Dorado. I'm okay about Kalisto. But those, yeah, sorry, not the very Kalisto on this podcast. Um, but to me, it didn't feel like it, they didn't want to actually push Gallows and Anderson aside from that first initial push.
Mm.
And then they just kind of stuck on, oh, we're going to put him with AJ. Well, now we're going to put him with Finn because they used to be in a club together in Japan. Wink. Um, and so, listen, I really do feel like both of those guys are working a lot harder in Impact than they did at WWE. And maybe they're not getting paid as much as they like to say that they are. Maybe they are trying to turn this into the next big contract for them, or they're trying to get back into shape to go wrestle in Japan, which I think Carl Anderson desperately wants to do. I don't know about Doc Gallows necessarily. But I mean, when was the last time you saw Gallows drill a diving shoulder tackle, right? I mean,
Oh,
he
that looked
was
awesome.
it was a great diving shoulder tackle, and he kind of corkscrewed out of it. And
Mhm.
then of course he winds up getting the win with a pretty brutal super kick,
That super kick, yeah, man, my hips can't even bend that far up and around.
right?
And I was like, oh,
And you are not at the same stature as Doc Gallows.
that's a
So
big man.
It is, and typically a man of his stature would do a big boot and call it a day, but that was a super kick. So
Yeah,
definitely go out of your way to check out that super kick because it was it was pretty loud and pretty devastating. It was pretty good, and so of
it was
course
good.
he
And
gets
the
the
sell
win.
by Ethan. Oh, he
He
just
did sell. He
freaking
did sell. Yeah,
stone cold
like
dropped.
he was dead. Um, I really enjoyed the
I love
match.
him.
Definitely worth watching for sure, for sure.
Absolutely. A little
You-
tiny bit of interference, but it wasn't too bad that it distracted you away from the match. It made
No,
perfect sense with the storyline.
and it didn't
And
it
yeah,
didn't decide the match either, and I
no,
like that too.
exactly.
I hate it when distractions cause the end of the match, and we'll get into that later. Um, but we get a nice backstage segment with Dylan, aka Swoggle, um, talking to Gia about how he's happy to be an Impact. He's ready to make a run here and be So it looks like we're getting Swoggle back full time, which is pretty cool. I always thought Dylan works hard and he takes really bad bumps, and he deserves to get a paycheck. Um, and then of course his backstage interview interrupted by the most professional wrestler, also the most professional jerk, as it turns out, Brian Myers.
Yeah, that. So, what did he say? I completely forgot about this segment. But he just what did he even do to him? He like kicked him or like pushed him. I think it must have turned for a second. But
Yeah, he two-hand shoved him because of course I think the name of Swago's book, and correct me if I'm wrong, is Life is Short and So Am I.
yeah,
Um, and then Brian Myers is like, listen, let me help you out. Your title for your book should be My Career and Impact is Short. And then he shoved him to the ground and said, So am I. So I don't know. Brian Myers, he takes his Tommy Dreamer feud, and then he's transitioning, I
mm,
guess, to a Swoggle feud. Not necessarily the start and impact I envisioned for the ultimate, the most professional wrestler. Um, but we'll see where this goes. Yeah, and I
I
suspect,
want I want him up there challenging for the main title. I really thought he was kind of working his way there, but there's still a lot of
yeah,
unfinished business when it comes to that. And of course you have Moose, but Moose is now distracted, which we'll get to here in a second. But yeah, did not. This is not exactly where I saw him going either. So we'll see.
yeah,
We'll see where they go with this. I'm sure they have something up their sleeve.
I'm sure too, and maybe it doesn't even necessarily turn into a match feud, but maybe
Uh,
it continues the Tommy Dreamer thing where Tommy's like, dude, quit fucking with Dylan. I don't know. But listen, I know I said match of the night before, but whoo boy, let me tell you about this one. It is Cody Deaner versus Johnny Swinger, aka the Swing Man, in a 4-minute barn burner that could not have ended sooner. Um, this match really stunk. I don't want to be negative. We try to not be negative, and so the less we talk about this, in my opinion, the closer we'll be able to stick to that. But of course, Johnny Swinger wins with and I wrote this down because I want people to understand this is a 100% factual thing that happened. He wins with a loaded fanny pack.
he
A loaded
did. I noted
fanny
that
pack.
too. Loaded with what? We don't know.
We don't know, and quite frankly, I don't want to know because I don't need to relive it. I just don't.
uh, I didn't think it was that bad.
I don't know.
I know you're looking at me with such disappointment right now, and I feel it. I feel it through the screen, Josh. I'm so sorry.
You should feel the
I
judgment
didn't.
right now. It was not good.
I feel it. I feel it, dude. I don't know. I didn't think it was the worst. It's
There was
as soon as
okay.
we see them, it's like, all right, Wrestle House crew. Okay, comedy match, especially when you see Johnny Swinger. And it's like, it's going to be a nothing funny throwaway, whatever match. But I feel like they still did
I
what
I
they
think
could.
the Diener gimmick I hate. I'll just be perfectly
Yeah.
honest. The rednecks drinking beer bit doesn't do anything for me. Maybe that's because I'm for the listeners that don't know, I'm a Florida born and raised gentleman, and I've lived around that stereotype my whole life.
Mm.
Um, Not necessarily in my family, just around, right? Um, Maybe it's just I've seen too much of that. or maybe I don't know, but just uh, taking a break for between corner stomps for a swig of beer, going to set up your finisher, but needing your hat first so you can turn it around backwards. And then there's also a really awkward spinning lariat punch that Cody Deaner did, where Johnny Swinger put his arms up for an axe handle and took like, I don't know, 7 strides in slow motion. It was really strange. I don't know. Every spot that I can remember from the match just makes me go shake my head. I don't know.
It was there. Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's them. It's Russell House. All right.
I know. Listen, I know I can't expect much out of Johnny Swinger and Cody
Yeah.
Deaner. Cody, I can expect more out of, I feel like, than Johnny Swinger. But of course,
Mm.
anytime the swingman's involved, it's just going to be, at least it's short.
Yeah.
I'll say
At
that.
least we have that.
So moving on from that, our good friend Moose, he's into his Chronicles, and now he's just walking around everywhere in a 3-piece suit. Um, and he cuts what I think is a pretty good promo in the middle of the ring there.
Yeah, I think so too. He comes out, like you mentioned, in his suit with his TNA Heavyweight Championship. Says he hasn't been taken seriously for a long time, but he went through hell to get the title. He defeated EC3. He said he killed EC3, I think he said.
Yeah,
He mentioned that he's born again. So I feel like the whole, control your narrative thing from EC3 really did impact, no pun intended, Moose. And that's exactly what they should have done and what I expected it to happen. He didn't come out with his little short shorts that he likes to wear, his casual
right.
style. He came out in a suit. He doesn't normally do that, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's kind of like a
that's
new
his.
thing for him.
Yeah, since Bound for Glory, he's only been seen in his 3-piece suit. Um,
Yeah.
it's a good look. I mean, it makes him look intimidating.
Oh my God,
Um,
so much.
he beat up Willie Mack in the parking lot last week, and then Willie Mack, of course, jumps him tonight before getting blasted. And we find out that Moose and Willie Mack have a singles match at Turning Point, and I'm looking forward to it. I hope it's a good one. Although when they start building up these characters in wrestling, finding controlling their narrative, rebirth, super monster characters, it could just be a squash. I hope they don't do Willie like that, but I could
Yeah.
also see it going that way. But when we preview Turning Point, I'm sure we'll touch on that a little more, and that's next week because that comes up real fast. Turning Point is the 14th.
Next week? The 14th. Yeah.
Yeah. So a
Oh,
week from
wait.
Saturday. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I know it was a busy month for wrestling again. So, anywho, we will move on from that to the main event.
This
Because I
was
think
my match of the night.
yeah, I mean, listen, it was really good. I love this match too. I thought it was really good. I thought, and we've talked about this before. Sami Callihan can work.
Oh
Eddie
my God.
Edwards can work.
So good.
Eric Young can work, and of course Rich Swann can. I mean, everything. Top to bottom. Right up into the finish. I really enjoyed this match.
Me too. I mean, every single one of them, they looked their absolute best. This felt like a pay-per-view caliber match to me. They were all doing everything that they needed to do to make sure that this match was the best of the night, which to me, it personally was. It was very explosive from the very get-go, just from their entrances. It was like, all right, we're going, They've had these storylines with these characters for so long, and it really, you can feel that in the ring where it's like, hey, Eric Young and Rich Swann, that was just recently. Eddie Edwards and Sami Callihan, that storyline's been going on for a very long time.
Yeah.
We also have Eddie Edwards and EY. Sami Callihan, I'm sure, has messed with Rich Swann at some point or another. And you can feel that intensity and that heat from their previous storylines in this match. As far as the moves, I mean, everyone got to get their shit in. I thought Sami and EY worked great as a team.
They
It was
did.
very explosive. Yeah, they really did.
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting is what we see at the end of the night, Ken comes in, and this is what you were talking about as far as interference, which
Yeah.
kind kind of messes with the match. Ken does come in with the assist, and Sammy ultimately pins Eddie Edwards after Ken comes in and kind of helps everyone out. What we see standing in the ring is, Eric Young and Sammy Callahan and Ken Shamrock, very excited and elated. EY and Sammy, I feel like this looks like a new faction to me. What do you think?
If they want to go that way, they certainly can. I mean, we know Sammy has a couple of screws loose. We know Eric
And
Young,
so does EY.
of course, has, I mean, more than a few. And Ken Shamrock, we'll see where they go with Ken. I can't imagine that he's going to be a huge integral part of it. But yeah, I mean, they kind of mirrored the Eddie Edwards, Sammy Callahan match, and that, Ken Shamrock distracts Eddie, Sammy rolls him up. This time, Eddie kicks out, but then he winds up getting pulled into a pile driver, and that's how Sammy gets the win. But yeah, I mean, it's a heel tag team that both guys have a pile driver as their finisher. Um, and then they
Lots
got
of in
extra muscle
stereo
with Ken
things happening
Shamrock.
there.
So I mean, we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be mad at it.
I think it could work, and they can get some other people in there. Maybe I can't think of anyone off the top of my head right now, but Eric Young and Sammy Callahan together, not necessarily as I don't know, not necessarily. They worked well as a tag team, but I can just see this being the start of a faction rather than just like the start of a new tag team, because our tag team division is already loaded. They need more main event guys, I feel like.
Yeah.
And Eric Young has been doing a great job at that. Maybe it's hard to say. They can go in so many different ways, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, that's a wrap on this week's Impact. We'll definitely keep you updated on anything on this show that happens outside of Impact with our Impact Wrestling crew. But yeah, for this week, we'll put a lid on it, and next week we'll of course talk about the weekend Impact as well as previewing the Turning Point card, which we should have a few more matches. I think they only have 2 official matches slotted for Turning Point right now. Obviously, we'll probably see like 3 or 4 more added next week. Would be my suspicion. Yeah, I mean, pretty good episode. Was it our best episode? No, but yeah, it worked. It got the job done. And it moves us forward towards Turning Point.
And I'm excited. Isn't that when they're starting the women's tag team tournament? Or am I wrong?
I don't know that they are. I think they're supposed to start on Impact with that first, but they do have like a preview match next week with Madison and Tennille versus Havoc and Nevaeh. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, now that Impact, we put the lid on that, Sandy, I'm going to take you back to 2001. 2001 was, a pretty interesting year, especially in gaming. We have, the end of the 64 kind of in the rearview mirror. We have the GameCube starting to kind of ramp up, and we're starting to see Nintendo kind of push this new wave of titles at us. And, I don't know if you're familiar with this game series. Did you ever play the Harvest Moon series, Sandy?
I did not.
Okay, so Harvest Moon is, basically you build your own farm, you harvest plants, you take care of animals. It's, it kind of ushered in this idea that you could do kind of life simulation games, right? And not to be confused with The Sims, it's a little bit different than that. Um, but Nintendo said, it's great that Harvest Moon exists, but they're not really like we don't have them too much on our systems like going forward. And then they eventually came back. But they said, yeah, I think we can come up with one, kind of as our own unique first party publisher kind of thing. And it kind of plays off of the kawaii culture in Japan, the cute culture. And we see the release of Animal Crossing. And I don't know about you, when this came out, I was an 11-year-old boy. You were not. So what was your kind of first reaction to Animal Crossing.
Josh, so Animal Crossing is a game that we actually we started. I feel I'm gonna go back in a different. I'm
Sure.
gonna jump around. I remember when you created a Facebook group for the new Animal Crossing,
Yes, that's true.
New Horizons, and it was when we were on quarantine and we needed to find out who had the best freaking turnip prices because damn, these bastards really do try to take our money. It's a gamble. It's the stock market, if you will, for the game. And
Right.
we were playing
That's
on there, and I know,
STAOK. Yeah, stock market.
yeah.
Stock market.
And I was like, and I feel like that's when we first started to really like talk and get to know each other.
Yeah, yeah.
When
Built our
it came
friendship
to
off of it. Yeah, a little bit. We had met a couple of times through some like wrestling events and things, but yeah, for sure, definitely. This podcast wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Animal Crossing. I'm pretty comfortable saying that, Sandy.
me too. That's why I wanted to bring that up. It was like, okay, because of Animal Crossing, because of course wrestling shows and stuff, we were able to create the 8-Bit Suplex podcast, and that's why we're here. And so it's really great to talk about it. But I actually didn't play Animal Crossing until City Folk when it came. That was the one for the Wii, correct?
Yes.
So
That
that
was
was already
2008. Yeah.
2012, and I didn't play it much because I did not understand it. Actually, not 2012, 2008. It was right after
Right.
like high school for me. So of course, I'm doing all these other, straight out of high school, early 20s, partying. I didn't do too much gaming or wrestling watching back in those days. I was a little bit of a crazy person, just having a ball with my new independence. So let's not talk about what happened during those times.
Sure. No, we can
But
move right on. We can keep going. Just.
yep. Don't ask me questions about it. So I remember playing that one for just a little tiny bit. I really didn't get into it until New Leaf came out for the 3DS, and that to me is just what really completely sucked me into the world of Animal Crossing. But hey, I stand firm with this. Even those games, the gameplay on them, and which we'll get into, I feel like you can go back to any of those games and they age so well. They're timeless games.
Yeah.
I know just a couple of weeks ago I turned on my 3DS and I put on New Leaf and my town is still there. They're all mad at me because I haven't been there and the
Oh
weeds
yeah.
are everywhere and there's roaches in the house. But it's a ageless classic, and I truly have a special place in my heart for the Animal Crossing series. But when did you play first?
So I got the first one originally, right? And now when I say first
Okay.
one, there's a little bit of trivia to this, and you may not be aware of this, but the Animal Crossing in Japan, which I
Animal
believe was
Forest.
actually Animal Forest, and that's not my trivia question, but it was released first on the Nintendo 64. And so,
That's right.
which is why when we get it on the GameCube originally in 2001, the same year it came out on the N64 in Japan, the graphics are a little bit more block. They're a little bit more blocky. It's not necessarily the prettiest game on the GameCube. And actually, I think that kind of added to the appeal of it. It didn't look like it was, this high-end, super polished game. It looked like a game that you could sit down, on a Saturday and just, instead of like, getting your gear together and your mud boots and shit and going fishing, you could just, click on your GameCube and sit on the couch and relax for an afternoon, going fishing, planting flowers, hunting bugs, the kind of stuff that, most people do, right? Um, but yeah, I mean, Animal Crossing is such a unique thing too, because it kind of, posits this world where you're like the only human. Um, you and then, up to in the original, you had four houses in your village. So, you and your siblings, depending on, if there was not going to be fighting and different things like that, depending on who was in your house. Because, of course, in those days, there was no online play. But you could only get four houses, and everything else inside Animal Crossing are anthropomorphic animals. So, cats, cows, sheep, gorillas, foxes, penguins. I know I'm leaving out tons. But
Oh
it's a
my.
really very unique um, perspective on gaming. It just wasn't, nothing really was like it when it came out.
It really is. And to this day, I feel like, they had something kind of like this with the meat. What was that? Did you ever play for the 3DS Tamagotchi? Was
No.
it Tamagotchi? And so it was kind of like the similar concept to that in the Sims, but like with your friends, and you have a house, and you put your crap in there. I don't think it did very well, but I bought it, and it just kind of felt like a mobile game, But I still
Sure.
paid an ungodly amount of money for it on my 3DS because I'm going to support Nintendo no matter what. Um, but I wouldn't even pay 99 cents for a mobile game like that.
Right.
But I think there's something special about Animal Crossing because the things that you do are it's so relaxing, and it's such trivial things. You're not really playing to win. You're not playing. It's so interesting to me that it's still to this day one of those games where there's really no specific point or target, or there's milestones. Of course, you have goals. It's kind of like in life. It's
Right.
like it's life away from life, but in a way that it's so calming and relaxing. And it's even though you're doing things like, okay, you're decorating your home, you have to go pick up weeds, you have to go plant flowers and customize this and pay your freaking mortgage to Tom Crook,
Right.
that bastard. But it's just so relaxing. It's so nice, and they really are just completely one of a kind. And to me, I mean, you played a lot more of it. Did you play New Leaf, City Folk, Wild World as
Um,
well, or?
so I will tell you this is that um, I did have Wild World, and we've talked briefly a little bit before. I'm not the biggest DS 3DS player in history,
That's
just
right.
because it was at a time in my life where I wasn't playing a whole lot of handhelds. Um, City Folk, yeah, I played that one a little bit. I did. So my wife and I started dating back in 2012, and we both had 3DSs and played New Leaf together. Um,
Oh, that's
so
so cute.
yeah, we had two cartridges, two DSs, the whole nine yards. Um, and then yeah, and then of course New Horizons is the next one after that as far as a major release goes. And that was kind of interesting too because it was so long. You go from 2012 to 2020 that you don't have a main Animal Crossing release. You get some scatterings of some different things that didn't really go over well. Um, like Happy Home Designer, nobody really bought that. I mean, the diehards
Mm-mm.
did, but nobody was getting drawn into the series by Happy Home Designer. And then the other one, and this is one of those things that Nintendo kind of falls into sometimes, where they'll take one of their franchises and they'll use it to push whatever accessory, whatever hardware that they're trying to push at the time. Um, and that's Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival. Amiibos are really cool, but they're very cost prohibitive to people to try and get to collect them all. Unfortunately, like if you're a family that has a bunch of kids and different things, it, dropping $9 an Amiibo to play a game isn't that's not after you've already paid $60 for the game. To me that's just it's like one of those nitpicky, frustrating things with Nintendo where they really try to push that stuff. But outside of that, it wasn't really a traditional Animal Crossing game, anyways. And then before we get to New Horizons, the most traditional Animal Crossing release actually comes in the form of a mobile game called Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. Did you play any Pocket Camp, Sandy?
I did very, very briefly. I actually played it not too long ago when there were incentives for playing it now that New Horizons came out.
Hmm.
But when it first came out, it was just on its own. I played it a little bit, but it didn't draw me in. I don't know. There's that magic of the actual main Animal Crossing games that
Right.
cannot be captured when you're playing mobile. It doesn't feel like the same, and it's not supposed to be the same. It was supposed to be like a companion, like and I feel like that's where the whole um camping thing for that mobile game actually it ended up working pretty well, but I just couldn't really get too invested in it.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
the
yeah.
unfortunate thing is, and I think, we live in a part of the country where we don't have public transportation. Um, so you're driving everywhere, and it's frowned upon to play mobile games while you're driving, right? Um,
It's frowned upon.
I'm sure, many people are guilty of, doing something on their phones that they're not supposed to while they're driving, right? Texting or looking something up on the internet. Pocket Camp, I can't recommend doing while driving. But I thought it was a pretty robust game for mobile that was available for free to download off of the App Store. But it was a part of that wave of games that Nintendo said, okay, maybe we'll try to do some free apps um, to get downloads, to get people coming back to Nintendo some. There's a Mario Run game. I thought that was pretty good. They put Mario
Oh
Kart on
yeah, and it did very well.
yeah, and they put Mario Kart on there. And I think there's also a Fire Emblem game. Um, and they're really trying to push some of that too, and they're doing a pretty good job with it. But free to play mobile games are absolute money makers because people toss out all those pay to win incentives. So for you it might not seem like okay, well, okay, I'll throw $3 for this extra thing in Pocket Camp, right? To get extra, you know, get a strong fishing pole for $10, right? For
But
you, it's
$3 from a million people is a
right.
lot of money.
It's $3 million, right? So,
Yeah.
it adds up very quickly. And when you talk about the fact that it's available on iOS and Android and internationally, it's a big money maker for Nintendo. So I definitely appreciate that they actually took the time to make a full working game on mobile. But even Pocket Camp for what it is, and it is good, it doesn't compare to New Horizons at
No, my
all.
gosh, no.
And like what I want to stress and get over as much of a point here is each of the main titles have added new species of fish, added a wrinkle here about how to get your golden utensils, not utensils, but whatever you want to call them, tools.
Tools.
And you have these different things coming, and then oh, in this one you can swim, and oh, and you can do this in this one, and now you have New Horizons where literally as long as Nintendo wants to support the game, it can change forever. Um, and that's because obviously we live in a 2020 world where game patches, downloads, DLC, all of that exists. But really, without even there's not been any paid DLC associated with New Horizons, um, and it's still just this robust game. And it really, I think, Nintendo, in their infinite wisdom, I don't know how they figured this out. They decided to release the game right at the beginning of a global pandemic,
Oh
where
my gosh, yeah.
worldwide people started playing games again because they were home. And Animal Crossing New Horizons was a huge, and I will say huge success. Just in digital sales, in 1 month, they had 5 million digital sales. So,
Holy crap.
which is, I mean, when you talk about, digital sales, you're not, nobody's touching those numbers in a single month. It just doesn't happen. Um, like we talked about, like at the beginning of the pandemic, people are like, "Oh, Animal Crossing came out. Well, I don't have a Switch. Well, I mean, those two things together is only like $250. I'm gonna be home for a while." And so you saw Switch Lights run out. You saw Switch the full console run out. And the only thing, of course, that's endless is the games themselves. Um, and so Nintendo starts running those up, selling carts, selling digital sales. Um, and I'll say this, I'm pulling up these sales numbers here. And New Horizons is the third highest known launch month sales of any Nintendo published game. And
Oh,
so,
I didn't know that.
which is crazy because Animal Crossing is not necessarily a game series that's gotten all the big mainstream success of your Mario Brothers, your Zeldas, but what's interesting enough is that the two games that beat it um, were Super Smash Brothers Ultimate, which is a fantastic game on the Switch, and Super Smash Brothers Brawl. Um, which was, I believe, the Wii release. So you got two big titles there, and then of course everyone made the jokes at the same release date. I don't know if you remember this, Sandy, but New Horizons actually released on the same day as Doom Eternal.
No.
So it was very different sort of game.
Oh my gosh, no, that's all coming back to me. This year honestly feels like 10, like a whole decade into just one year. So like I'm
It's really
thinking
rough.
back on it,
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute. And I finally remember that. It was such a big release day and everyone's like, all right, you have freaking Doom and then freaking Animal Crossing.
So
Night and
and
day, literally.
right, exactly. Like, okay, you can either go to hell and kill demons, or you can go fish, um, and start terraforming your island or different things like that. Um, and one more note about sales, because I think this is significant. As of August 9th, Animal Crossing's New Horizons became the second highest selling game of all time in Japan. You
Wow.
want you want to take a guess at what number one is, Sandy?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea. I want to say Zelda.
I know that's your inclination, but
Any,
the highest selling game in Japan all time is Pokemon Red and Blue.
of course, duh.
So, to be number two to Pokemon Red and
Holy shit,
Blue,
that's insane.
all time in Japan history, and that's not best selling Nintendo game. That's not best selling, whatever. That is all video games in Japan all time number two behind Pokemon Red and Blue. Um, which, I'm sure at some point we'll talk about Pokemon. Tonight's not that night. We don't have time for that because that is a very long discussion.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
but yeah, it was pretty funny too when you start looking at some kind of the impact, right? We talked about like the pandemic impact and different things. Um, but the Joe Biden 2020 presidential campaign actually had someone design yard signs in game
Yes.
so that you could actually put up a yard sign in your game for people to come and visit your island and to show your support for Joe Biden.
Yeah, didn't they build their own island? I think I was reading about that. I was like, oh
Yes,
my God.
yeah, it was pretty funny. I
That's so
mean,
wild.
we talked about, and maybe, she's going to come up again, I'm sure, on this podcast. But of course, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez also is an avid Animal Crossing player. There were stories about how she would pop in on people's islands randomly, and people would be like, "Oh my God, AFC's on my island." So yeah, and what's crazy is that like there are people that have held like kind of services like funeral services and memorial services and different things like that on the game that they couldn't normally have due to COVID restrictions and things. So it's really, really become a cultural phenomenon. And I think, if the pandemic didn't hit at the time of the release game, I don't
It
think that
wouldn't have.
happens. So
No, I
it's
don't believe that would have at all.
no, but but this is a good example, I think, of really the good that gaming can bring.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's wild to me because, like you mentioned earlier, Animal Crossing was not one of Nintendo's big IPs. It's not one of their big franchises that they're going to push, like a Mario, like a Zelda, like Pokemon. It wasn't. Animal Crossing had a very niche type of fan base, and you had your diehard Animal Crossing fans, and they followed through from Wild World to City Folk and New Leaf and so on. So it was just one of those games. It was never intended or meant to have such an impact the way it did in 2020. And the pandemic was literally the best thing that could have happened for for this game and for Nintendo. And I know that sounds awful, but when you look at it that way, just like we mentioned, there is no way in hell New Horizons would have gotten to 5 million mobile digital sales in one month, or be number 2 best-selling game of all time in Japan. There's no way in hell. They play it a lot over there. I think more so than maybe other parts of the world. But now
I'm sure
this is
probably
a
per capita,
worldwide thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
certainly.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
it's a very Japan themed aesthetic in the game, right?
Mm.
And like I mentioned, it draws hugely off of that kawaii culture that Japan has. The Sanrio type stuff, right? Your Hello Kitties, your
Hawaii.
whatever the other characters are. I know there's like there's like a character that's like over easy eggs, like it's just random, So drawing off of that and anthropomorphizing everything, um, and I think that's why initially when it came over to the U.S. On the GameCube, it was a slow build in popularity, and it was a slow kind of trudging through. And I think that's maybe why they took so long in between each major release, because it wasn't like it was one of their flagships. Sure, it was only ever going to be on Nintendo, um, but it just it was one that needed a kick in the pants to drive sales. And now, I mean, I my wife has cousins that have not picked up a video game since 1988. They went out and bought Switches, and like they're all
Oh.
sitting around their house, during the pandemic playing Animal Crossing. So this game's impact is huge. I don't think we'll see a video game impact the industry quite like this in this way, uh, maybe ever again, but certainly not anytime soon. Um, but that's what Nintendo does constantly. They always find a way to bring you back and to make you feel like a kid again.
And that's why I love them so much. And you know what? That's the best thing to me for anyone who hasn't played Animal Crossing or who wants to or who shares the same feelings the way we do. What really sets this game apart is the real passage of time when it comes to their gameplay. So yeah, we're
Yeah,
talking about very trivial things like fishing. There's other fishing games out there like planting flowers and harvesting things. So there's plenty of mobile games that are like that. This game, though, the way it's able to kind of capture you in and take you away to a whole different world is the real passage of time.
right,
You know, the way they're able to send these updates. Okay, they're able to not just the real time thing, but also be able to translate that into the game so beautifully. Because that thing looks amazing on my TV with my Switch. Oh my
yeah,
gosh!
it
But
does.
you have your sunrise, you have your sunset, and it's right there matching your time. It's based on where you live, your location, your time zone. So they're able to get the seasons. Okay, if you are somewhere where it's winter, guess what? Your game it's going to snow.
Right,
If it's summer, it's going to be summer. And if it's Halloween, they're gonna have a special Halloween event. Like,
right.
did you get to play the Halloween event by any
No,
chance?
I didn't. I didn't. I
Oh
haven't played it. I
no!
haven't played it in full disclosure. I haven't played Animal Crossing in a while. It's something that
How dare you?
Colleen yells at me quite often. Um, and but no one plays it. I was going to say my 4-year-old, but since we've been recording this, he's turned 5 while recording this.
Oh,
So happy
happy
birthday, of
birthday,
course,
Noah!
to Nolan. And I don't know if you caught, I had Nolan do a intro outro for the commercial break last week for the
Oh my
podcast.
God,
So
so cute.
that's at the hour 14 mark, and I know that because Nolan's made me go back and rewind it because he likes hearing himself on the podcast. Um, and then I
I love
ripped some audio from a video of Molly doing because I asked Molly for a star rating on a match, and she said that she would give it 10 stars. And so I ripped that
it.
into the commercial break as well. So that's where that audio came from. So they're both like, "Can I hear me on the radio again?" Like, all right, here we
Oh,
go. Just scrubbing through
so
back to that hour 14 mark on last week's episode. So if we have an influx in plays, I haven't looked at it, but that's why. But not to get off on that tangent there. But yeah, Nolan plays it quite a bit. He has a character on my island, and then Molly, my 3-year-old, has a character on Colleen's island. So the whole family's playing. It's an all ages game. Like we mentioned, there's no winning, there's no fighting, there's no
it's
anything.
so
It's
sentimental,
it's
dude.
just peaceful.
And let me tell you, I want to tell you this story. So I got into it more when New Leaf came out because I remember watching E3. I think it was 2010 or 2011 when they announced it, when they showed it. And I played City Folk, but I wasn't really that into it. And I know Wild World was the one that really kind of put it into the map because that was the first release on the DS.
Yeah,
And so being able to play that on the go, I mean, being able to play on the go, I feel like it's such an important factor when it comes to Animal Crossing. So that's why I loved it so much on the 3DS. The 3DS was my jam. I have like seven of them. I was the one camping out, the weird one camping out at Best Buys and Targets for the limited edition versions, even though I already had I had a bunch of them. And so, when I saw that at E3 and I was blown away. I was like, I couldn't wait to play for it. I had New Leaf and I was so invested. I put so many hours in my town. That was the first time you were able to play a role of mayor in your town. And I know New Leaf was such a, sometimes when we see games in a franchise, in a series, sometimes it's like, okay, there's not enough changes, or maybe there's too many changes. And I feel like they've gotten into a rut with City Folk that it was very new and different, but it just wasn't the same as the DS Wild World version. And some people may have been stuck on Wild World and they said, hey, you know what? City Folk maybe wasn't as big as it could have been. But New Leaf, man, they nailed it out of the park. That was the first installment that was like, all right, you're going to be the mayor. You're going to be able to decorate your island so much more than you could have in the past.
Right.
You're able to... Well, you were able to visit people in Wild World, but they were able to introduce Amiibo and new locations, new items, new activities, and it was so much fun. I put so many hours into this game. My house actually got broken into. I was living alone in a house in St. Pete. My house got broken into, and they stole everything: my MacBook, my TV, radios, all my gaming consoles. They stole my 3DS, and honestly, I was more heartbroken about the stealing my 3DS because my New Leaf game was in it.
Oh no!
And I was like, I honestly cried. I was like, I don't care about all the other stuff. Just give me New Leaf. I was devastated. Like my whole town, all my work was just completely just done.
That's brutal.
I get a call. I know. I get a call from the cops. I kid you not. I wasn't able to recover my MacBook Pro. I was able to recover like my Xbox and some things like that. But when they called me and they said, hey, there's a 3DS in here that they describe it. It was I think it was the Triforce 3DS one, or I can't even remember. No, it was the original blue one that I had. Anyways, they freaking found it. And when he told me, it's like, hey, we found all this stuff, I started screaming when he said he found my 3DS. And then when I actually got it back from the cops and seeing that my game was still in there, and I turned it on and played it, I'm not even exaggerating. I started crying because I was like, my town is still here. And I immediately just went to work on all the weeds and killing the roaches and saying hi to everyone in my town because I wasn't there. It was, oh my gosh, that tug on my heartstrings. I was so devastated that I couldn't play it anymore.
Right.
And like I mentioned, I still have the game and I turned it on not too long ago. And of course, all the people are mad, but it's still there. It still knows what time, what date it is. It knows how long you've been away. You talk to your town, your other animals in the city or whatever you are, and they're like, hey, I haven't talked to you in so many months. And it's the most heartbreaking thing. But it is, you hear all these stories, like with me, with the house getting broken into. I've read stories online where there was this girl whose mom used to play with her, and her mom would send her little, like, the postcards, I think is what it is. Send the mail to them, right? In the game, with little notes and gifts and stuff, because you can do that in the game. And her mother had passed away, so she turned on New Leaf after so many years. And, because she stopped playing, but her mom still played. And then once her mom died, she turned on New Leaf and saw like all the little letters that she had left that she hadn't read before. And I was like, oh my God. So it is such a sentimental game, but it's not just for little kids or women. Anyone can enjoy it. You're a grown man. And
I like to think I am.
Yeah, you are. And during this the pandemic, it's crazy to see how everyone just said, okay, what are we going to do when we're in quarantine? And we don't know how long we're going to be in quarantine for. This was the perfect escape for so many people.
Yeah.
Celebrities like Elijah Wood, Danny Trejo. Have you seen his island?
Yeah, I've seen those. Those are pretty funny. Yeah.
If you didn't know, Danny freaking Trejo from what were those movies, like the Grindhouse movies, and craziest, meanest looking bad guy in movies that you've ever seen. He has the scariest face. He's over here playing Animal Crossing and doing interviews, inviting people to his island to see what he plays. And he's over here. I don't know if you've watched those YouTube videos, Josh, but it's so funny. He just goes over there. He's like, his favorite thing is catching bugs, and he'll get distracted and he'll go catch every single bug that he sees while he's doing an interview on his island. It's the cutest thing in the freaking
That's
world.
pretty funny.
Anyone can play. Man, I'm telling you. And I think you're still having a hard time finding stock of the Nintendo Switch after the crisis.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know if the birthday boy is asleep, so I'm going to say this part of the podcast a little softer. We did have to go and find one, and I was lucky to find one. Um, but yeah, it was definitely a struggle, and it was something that had to be done like ahead of time. But yeah, they are definitely harder, especially the lights. The lights are really hard to come by.
Oh God, yeah.
So, because they are $100 cheaper. So I think that probably plays a huge part of it. We have one of each in the house currently in use. Colleen plays on the light, and then I have the regular Switch because I bought one at launch. Um, of course, my left Joy-Con is completely screwed up, which is a topic for another time. The woes of the Joy-Con controller.
It was no issue, right? I think I just read about it. I'm like, oh no,
Yeah.
mine too.
Yeah, Joy-Con drift is bad. And I won't rant about it tonight. But yeah, no, definitely. I know we haven't really like talked about gameplay too much, and more so just kind of the overview of what Animal Crossing is and what it means to the world of gaming as a whole. It's a very simplistic gameplay style, but you get lost in the simplicity and the ease of use, and you can just kind of just sit back and kick back for a few hours and just you know relax. And I think ultimately, gaming has always been an escape for me from whatever's going on around, whatever stress, whatever work or school or whatever's going on. And sometimes to get away from the stress, you need to play something that's not stressful. And it's not a stressful game really at all. So definitely, if you've never played an Animal Crossing game, now there's never been a better time to start than now. So definitely find yourself a Switch, find yourself Animal Crossing New Horizons, or go to your local game store and pick up a GameCube and pick up Animal
Ooh.
Crossing from back to the original, which I
It'll
do have.
still,
I
it'll
still
still
have
hold
my
up.
I still have my copy of Animal Crossing from 2001 and a
Oh my
working
God.
GameCube. So I think Colleen a few months ago fired it up and she's like, "Wow, this is like so great!" Like she was like just loving it. She played it for like an afternoon, and of course, it became a situation of like she can't just go sit in the bedroom all day hooked up to the TV. So she went back to playing New Horizons with her light on the couch or so she can kind of pick it up, put it down, do the kid stuff with the kids. But yeah, no, definitely go check it out if you haven't. Um, I have
I will
one
tell
more.
you though. So you said it's not a stressful game. I've actually gotten stressed, and let me tell you why.
Okay,
So the whole terraforming thing is brand
yeah,
new in New Horizons.
yeah, it is.
So I was so used to, I can't tell you how many years or how many hours I put into New Leaf. So to me, the terraforming thing is just so new. And I've been like, I still haven't really gotten too into it because I'm like, it's too much. It's too new. And I'm a little bit of a perfectionist too. So I feel
Yeah,
like if I start something and it's not going to turn out right in how I want it, then I have to go through all the work of changing it up again. And then I've also gotten into the really bad habit of like going on YouTube and Twitter and checking out everyone's freaking most beautiful towns ever. And I'm like, mine will never compare. Like, we're not even playing the same game right now because the imagination that people have for this game, you're
yeah,
able to customize essentially every piece of your island the
it's true.
way you want it. And not just the island itself, but the villagers that live there as well, what you wear, how you look like, the way the houses look like, the furniture, the backgrounds to make cafes, you can make amusement park, you can make literally anything on this island. And that to me is just the possibilities are just endless and it's so great,
Yeah,
but it's also terrifying because I'm like, I barely have terraformed and it's because I'm like, okay, no, like once I start, I'm going to get in there and it's going to be like, I'm going to have to spend all these freaking bells to move the houses around because it's not going to be exactly how I want it, and it's going to drive me crazy. And I honestly have not even terraformed my island. That's why I don't like to have anyone over. I just go visit people's islands.
Yeah, so I can understand the stress there. I think it's just one of those things where it is such a massive part of the game that yeah, I mean if you don't take it a little chunk at a time, if you try to think about the big picture at first, without taking that first step, and then you can only move like a house a day, and then there's so yeah, you got to do some planning, but I don't know, it's a mellow game for me. I don't get too wrapped up in all that stuff. Um, but before we finish talking about it, and I want to point this out, this is kind of a fun little trivia as well. Um, do you know that Animal Crossing City Folk was not called City Folk in every region?
I did not know.
In Europe and in Australia, it carries a different name, which is Animal Crossing Let's Go to the City.
And do we have a reason why? City folk. Let's go to the city.
I'm sure it has probably something to do with like local nomenclature and calling, I don't know if calling someone, city folk in Europe means something different than here. Like calling, it'd be like calling someone like a redneck or a country bumpkin or something. I don't know.
Animal Crossing, City Hicks. I don't know.
Right, exactly. Animal Crossing Beverly Hillbillies.
Oh no.
But yeah, oh, and you know what? And also, if you don't want to spend any money and you haven't played Animal Crossing, and I'll point this out and kind of end with it, download Pocket Camp on your phone, your iPad, whatever. It's free.
That's true.
Excuse me.
But no, I still feel like it wouldn't be enough of an impact. You need to go, if you haven't played Animal Crossing, go play Animal Crossing. If you think you're too good for it, too manly for it, too bad. Danny Trejo plays it. You can play it too.
That's true. Not a single one of our listeners, and this is a personal guarantee that I'll make, Sandy, is more quote unquote manly than Danny Trejo. It's just not possible.
It's not possible at all.
I mean, the guy's total kick ass, and he's been in a lot more action movies than the rest of us. That's for sure. But yeah,
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of that's our little Animal Crossing discussion. It's the reason why we're here week in and week out discussing Impact Wrestling in a roundabout way.
Yeah.
But no, it's definitely it's a great game series. Impact is a great wrestling promotion. And I mean, we enjoy talking about all these things. So definitely subscribe to our show if you haven't already. Go ahead and hit those 5 stars. Give us a nice little review. Tell us how sweet and awesome we are. And go follow us on Twitter at 8-Bit Suplex. And then you can also follow, of course, the whole network at Social Suplex. And then go ahead and follow me if you want. Most of my stuff is wrestling related. But sometimes it makes a little bit of politics in there. If you like a little politics with your wrestling. Of course,
Spicy.
I don't know if you know this, Sandy, but apparently, according to Chris Jericho himself, he's not a very political person. He just had Donald Trump Jr. on his podcast. But before we go off the rails there, but yeah, so go ahead and follow me too at Laughlin_Josh, and Sandy, go ahead and let the people know where they follow you.
On Twitter, I am at Sailor Zelda. On Instagram, I am at Sandy Gaviria. That's Gaviria. And let us know if you played Animal Crossing and give me your friend ID so I can visit your island.
Yeah, exactly.
We got you guys so much for tuning in.
Yeah, no, we had a lot of fun. Great to have you back, of course, Sandy. Make sure you go to prowrestlingtees.com/social-suplex. Pick up all your hot shirts from the Social Suplex Podcast Network. Of course, while you're checking out our show, checking out the Social Suplex Podcast Network feed, make sure you go ahead and listen to all of our other shows. Of course, the Ace of Podcasts that I mentioned earlier, keeping it strong style. And then, of course, you have
so much content.
So much content. I mean, and I want to point out that we're probably the shortest show weekly outside of Grave Consequences. And we're at like 2 hours or so pretty much weekly. And One Nation Radio and Keeping a Strong Style are both around 3 most of the time, and can go longer. Wow. Those guys, great wrestling minds, really on all the podcasts. Check out Ricky and Clive also. All things elite for you AEW fans. You know, grave consequences for all of those that really enjoyed Lucha Underground and want to listen to a episode by episode breakdown of a show that's no longer on the air. But a really good show, really good wrestling
Such
show.
a good show.
So definitely check it all out. Check us out everywhere that you can. Get our shirt. Christmas is coming. We could use the money. You know, I'm not afraid to shamelessly say that. You know.
Oh, there you go.
So
Thank you guys.
yeah, but that's it. We'll see you all, I guess,
Next week.
next week.
Woo.
Bye.
Bye.